The bathroom was barely big enough for one person, its cracked tiles and flickering overhead light casting uneven shadows across the mirror. It was late, well past midnight, and the house was finally quiet. The only sounds were the soft whirring of the ceiling fan and the distant rustle of a child shifting in bed. James stood shirtless in front of the mirror, his face pale under the harsh light. He slowly lifted his arm and ran his fingers over the right side of his torso, just below his ribs. There, hidden beneath his skin, was the lump. It wasn't large, but it had been there for some time, months, maybe longer. It felt firmer than it should, unmoving. He exhaled shakily, eyes narrowing at his reflection. His mind began racing, cycling through worst-case scenarios. Is it cancer? Just a cyst? Something worse? But the thoughts were quickly interrupted by a small voice from the hallway. "Daddy?" He flinched and dropped his hand from the lump, hastily pulling his shirt back on. He splashed cold water on his face, trying to erase the worry from his expression. Turning off the tap, he took one last look in the mirror. His eyes still held the fear, but he forced his mouth into a gentle smile. "I'm coming, sweetheart," he called out. He stepped out of the bathroom, burying the concern deep down like he had so many times before. His children needed him to be strong, not scared. There was no room in his world for sickness, not now. Whatever it was, it would have to wait. He had lunches to pack, stories to read, nightmares to chase away, and no one else to do it. And so, the secret stayed with him. For now. The sun had barely risen, but the small kitchen was already alive with activity. A pot of oatmeal bubbled on the stove, toast popped up from the toaster, and cartoon voices echoed faintly from the living room. James moved quickly, his motions automatic from years of routine. He poured cereal into bowls, peeled bananas with one hand while pouring juice with the other. "Dad, I can't find my backpack," shouted his oldest from the hallway. "I spilled the milk," cried the middle one. The toddler banged a spoon rhythmically on the table, laughing. James winced slightly as he reached for a box on the top shelf. The sudden stretch sent a sharp jolt through his side. He paused, gripping the counter with one hand, his breath caught in his throat. The lump, it had grown. The pain was more persistent now, deeper. But he gritted his teeth and forced himself upright, hiding the discomfort behind a smile. "It's okay," he said, his voice calm. "Let's take it one step at a time." He handed the towel to his daughter to clean up the milk, then found the missing backpack stuffed behind the couch cushions. Every movement sent reminders of the thing he was trying to ignore, but he didn't let it show. When the kids were momentarily distracted, he stepped into the pantry, pulled a small bottle from the back shelf, and popped 2 painkillers. He swallowed them dry, leaning against the shelves for a moment of silence. He closed his eyes. Just get through the day. One more day. Outside, the school bus rumbled up the street. James called out with cheerful urgency, helping his kids get their shoes on, zipping jackets, planting quick kisses on foreheads. The pain never left, but neither did he. It was supposed to be a good day. The elementary school gym was packed with parents, teachers, and cheering children. Streamers hung from the rafters, a handmade banner reading, "Fall Talent Show," fluttered over the stage. James stood at the back, holding his phone up to record as his youngest son took the stage, shyly clutching a toy guitar. He smiled proudly, shoulders tense but face calm. The pain had been growing worse for weeks, sharper now, like a knife twisting under his ribs. But he powered through it like he always did. For them. The music began. His son strummed along, slightly offbeat, but radiant with joy. James clapped and laughed, even though his vision was beginning to blur. His knees trembled. Then, in an instant, the world tilted. The phone slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor. A loud gasp rippled through the gym as James collapsed forward, hitting the hardwood with a heavy thud. Panic erupted. "Call 911. Someone help him. Children screamed. Teachers rushed forward. His son stood frozen on stage, eyes wide in horror. James was semi-conscious, his breath shallow, the edges of his vision dark. He could barely feel the hands trying to keep him still. Someone asked him questions, but the words didn't make sense. Through the chaos, he heard his daughter's voice crying his name. That hurt more than anything. In the back of his mind, he knew the moment he'd feared had finally come. He couldn't hide it anymore. By the time the ambulance doors slammed shut, James lay strapped to a stretcher, an oxygen mask pressed to his face. The pain was no longer silent. It roared now, demanding attention. As the sirens wailed, his children watched the flashing lights disappear down the street, tears streaming down their faces. The hospital room was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines and the low hum of fluorescent lights overhead. James sat propped up in the hospital bed, pale and exhausted, his breath shallow. And 4 lines snaked into his arm. He was alone now, his children were at home with a neighbor, still in shock, asking questions he didn't yet know how to answer. The door creaked open and in stepped Dr. Patel, a middle-aged man with kind eyes but a tight jaw. He held a folder of scans in one hand and a tablet in the other. His white coat swayed slightly as he walked, but his face had changed since their last conversation. The casual professionalism was gone, replaced by something unreadable. He sat down slowly across from James, laid the scans on the table, and tapped the screen. "I want you to see this," he said, voice low. The screen lit up with a 3D scan of James's torso. A large, dark mass pulsed like a shadow between organs. It wrapped around his lower ribs and pressed into his diaphragm. Dr. Patel didn't speak at first. He just stared at the image, his mouth slightly open. Then, after a long pause, he looked at James. "How long have you had this?" he asked. James hesitated, then shrugged weakly. "Started noticing it, maybe 12 years ago." Dr. Patel froze. 12 years, he repeated, almost in disbelief. "You've been carrying this for 12 years?" James gave a faint, humorless chuckle. "Didn't really have time to be sick. Kids needed me more than a diagnosis." Dr. Patel leaned back, clearly shaken. "Mr. Wallace, this tumor, it's massive. Honestly, I don't know how you're still walking." James nodded slowly. "I didn't have much choice." And for the first time in years, the truth was out. The hospital room was dimly lit, the sun dipping below the horizon and casting a soft amber glow through the window. Machines beeped steadily beside James's bed, and the sterile scent of disinfectant hung in the air. But for the first time in days, the room didn't feel cold. His 3 children sat quietly around him, his youngest curled up in the chair by his feet, his daughter gently holding his hand, his oldest trying to stay brave but unable to hide the tears threatening his eyes. James looked at them all, his whole world, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking. "I should have told you. A long time ago." His daughter sniffled. "Why didn't you, Daddy?" He blinked hard, forcing back his own tears. "Because I didn't want you to worry. I thought, if I just kept going, if I stayed strong, maybe it would go away. But it didn't. And I kept putting you first. Every day." His son leaned forward. "But you didn't have to do it alone." James let out a slow breath, nodding. "I know that now." He reached out, his hand trembling, and took each of their hands into his. "This thing inside me, it's serious. The doctors are going to do everything they can. And so will I. I'm going to fight with everything I've got." A long silence fell between them. Then James smiled through the pain. "But I need you with me. Not just as my kids. As my team." They nodded, their eyes locked on his. "I promise," he whispered, "no more hiding. No more pretending I'm invincible. I'm still your dad, but I'm human too. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by love and fragile hope, the healing finally began, not just of the body, but of the heart.